The morning light streamed through the windows of the Daily Grind Cafe, casting a warm glow on the wooden tables and the people who sat at them. It was a typical Tuesday, and James Harrington was in his usual spot in the corner, the one with the perfect view of both the street and the cafe's interior. He liked watching people while he worked. James wasn't like the other customers who came in for a quick coffee before rushing to their 9-to-5 jobs. As the CEO of Next Level Tech, he could work from anywhere he wanted, and he chose this small cafe away from his glass-walled office in the downtown skyscraper where everyone watched his every move. "Your usual, Mr. Harrington?" The voice belonged to Amara Johnson, the waitress who had been serving him for the past 6 months. She stood beside his table, notepad in hand, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Yes, please," James replied, with a smile, closing an email on his laptop. "And maybe one of those blueberry muffins today." "Coming right up." Amara nodded and walked away, weaving between the tables with practiced ease. James watched her for a moment before returning to his work. There was something different about Amara. Unlike the other staff who seemed to just go through the motions, she had a quiet focus, an attentiveness that made him feel like his order was the most important task of her day. It was probably why he kept coming back to this particular cafe. As he typed away on his keyboard, James lost track of time. The cafe grew busier around him, the morning crowd replaced by the lunch rush. His phone buzzed on the table. It was his assistant reminding him of an important meeting with investors in 30 minutes. "Here's your third coffee, Mr. Harrington," Amara said, placing a fresh cup on his table. "You've been working hard today." "Thanks, Amara," he said, gathering his things quickly. "And please, I've told you before, call me James." She smiled politely but didn't respond to his request. James noticed that about her too. She maintained a professional distance, never crossing the invisible line between server and customer. "I've got a meeting," he explained, standing up and putting on his coat. "Investors. They get cranky if I'm late." "Good luck," she offered, already clearing his empty cups. James nodded his thanks and hurried out, his mind already shifting to the presentation he needed to deliver. The cold air hit his face as he stepped outside, and he quickened his pace, toward the office building 6 blocks away. It wasn't until he was sitting in the conference room reaching into his bag for his laptop that he realized it wasn't there. A moment of panic seized him as he mentally retraced his steps. He'd been working on it at the cafe. Had he packed it up? He remembered closing it, but had he put it in his bag? "Everything all right, James?" asked Vivian, his CFO, as the other executives filed into the room. "I think I left my laptop at the cafe," he admitted, already standing up. "I need to go get it. Can you stall for about 20 minutes? Without waiting for her answer, he was out the door, cursing under his breath. His entire presentation was on that laptop, not to mention sensitive company information, emails, and access to various accounts. He'd been so distracted by the meeting reminder that he'd committed a rookie security mistake. The 6 blocks back to the cafe felt twice as long. By the time he pushed through the door, his heart was pounding both from the brisk walk and the anxiety. The lunch crowd had thinned out and his corner table was empty. His laptop wasn't there. James scanned the cafe frantically, looking for Amara or any of the staff. That's when he spotted his laptop, open and very much in use, behind the counter. And the person using it was Amara. She hadn't noticed him yet. Her eyes were fixed on the screen, her expression intense with concentration. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with surprising speed and confidence. Nothing like the careful, measured movements he'd observed when she took orders on her notepad. For a moment, James stood frozen, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Was she stealing his information? Checking his social media? Using his credit card details? A wave of anger and betrayal washed over him. He'd been coming here for months, building what he thought was a pleasant customer-server rapport, and this was how she repaid his friendliness. He strode toward the counter, his face set in a hard line. "Excuse me," he said, his voice sharp enough to make her jump. Amara's head snapped up, her eyes wide with surprise and immediate recognition. The color drained from her face. "Mr. Harrington, She stepped back from the laptop as if it had suddenly burned her fingers. "What exactly do you think you're doing with my computer?" James asked, his tone icy but controlled. He was aware they weren't alone. A few customers lingered at their tables and another staff member was watching curiously from near the espresso machine. "I can explain," Amara said, her voice steady despite the evident fear in her eyes. "It's not what it looks like." "It looks like you're using my laptop without my permission," James replied, moving behind the counter to reclaim his property. "That's a serious breach of privacy, not to mention possibly illegal." "Your laptop was open," she began, stepping aside to let him reach it. "You left it on the table and I brought it back here for safekeeping, but then I noticed—" "You noticed?" "What? An opportunity?" James cut her off, his patience wearing thin. He glanced at the screen, expecting to see his emails open or his browser history, but what he saw instead made him pause. It was code. Lines and lines of code that looked familiar. It was part of the new app his company was developing. But something was different about it. The section she'd been working on had been restructured with comments added in the margins. "What is this?" he asked, his anger momentarily overshadowed by confusion. "What are you doing with our code?" Amara took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "I noticed a bug," she said simply. "When you went to the bathroom, earlier before you left, I saw the code on your screen. There was an error in the algorithm that would have caused memory leaks when scaled up. I was just fixing it." James stared at her, then back at the screen, trying to process what she was saying. A waitress in a small cafe had not only recognized his company's proprietary code but had spotted an error that his team of highly paid developers had missed. "You understand this code?" he asked slowly, his voice dropping to a whisper. Amara nodded, a flicker of confidence returning to her expression. "Yes, I was just trying to help. I know I shouldn't have touched your computer and I'm really sorry about that. But I couldn't just let you leave with that bug in your system. It would have crashed eventually." James looked at her, really looked at her for the first time, not as the waitress who brought his coffee, but as someone with a mind that might be as sharp as his own. Someone who saw a problem and couldn't walk away from it, even at the risk of getting in trouble. And in that moment, as the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the cafe windows, James Harrington's world shifted just slightly on its axis. The cafe had gone quiet. The few remaining customers pretended not to watch the scene unfolding near the counter, but their sideways glances betrayed their curiosity. The other waitress, Lucia, hovered nearby, unsure if she should intervene. James looked from the laptop screen to Amara, trying to reconcile the woman standing before him with what he was seeing on his computer. The code modifications were elegant, efficient, clearly the work of someone with advanced programming knowledge. "Who are you?" he asked finally, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Amara straightened her shoulders slightly. "I'm the person who serves your coffee every morning," she replied, a hint of defiance in her tone. "But I'm also someone who knows when code has a critical error." James ran a hand through his hair, his earlier anger now mixed with confusion and a growing curiosity. "We should talk about this," he said, closing the laptop. "But not here." He glanced around the cafe, aware of the attention they were drawing. The manager, a middle-aged man named Tom, had emerged from the back room, eyebrows raised in question. "Everything okay, Amara?" Tom asked, his gaze flicking between her and James. "Fine, Tom," Amara replied quickly. "Mr. Harrington left his laptop, and I was just returning it to him." Tom nodded, though he didn't look entirely convinced. "Your shift ends in 15 minutes anyway. Why don't you take your break now?" Amara hesitated, then nodded. "Thanks." She turned to James. "There's a small park across the street. We can talk there." James agreed, tucking his laptop under his arm as he waited for Amara to untie her apron and grab her coat. His phone buzzed. Again, likely Vivian wondering where he was, but he ignored it. This situation demanded his full attention. The park was little more than a square of grass with a few benches and trees, but it was quiet. They sat side by side on a bench, an awkward foot of space between them. "I owe you an apology," Amara began, her eyes fixed on a point in the distance. I had no right to touch your computer. If you want to report me or get me fired, I understand. James studied her profile. Up close, away from the cafe setting, she looked younger, maybe mid-20s. There was a tension in her jaw that hadn't been there when she served him coffee. I'm more interested in how a waitress recognized a memory leak in proprietary code at a glance, he said, and then knew exactly how to fix it. Amara turned to face him. I have a degree in computer science from MIT, she said simply. I graduated, top of my class 2 years ago. James raised his eyebrows. MIT? And you're working at the daily grind? A flash of something, hurt, perhaps, or frustration, crossed her face. Yes, I'm working at the daily grind. Because after sending out 178 job applications to tech companies and getting 26 interviews that went nowhere, I still need to pay rent and student loans. There was no self-pity in her voice, just a matter-of-fact delivery that made her words all the more impactful. 7 applications? James repeated, genuinely surprised. With an MIT degree? Amara gave a small, humorless laugh. Do you know what they tell women like me in interviews? We're looking for someone who's a better fit for our company culture. Or my personal favorite, we need someone with more experience. Meanwhile, they hire guys straight out of coding boot camps. James wanted to say this couldn't be true, that tech companies were desperate for talent, especially from top schools like MIT. But the evidence was sitting right next to him, brilliant enough to spot and fix an error in complex code at a glance, yet serving coffee for a living. Show me what you did, he said, opening his laptop again. Explain the fix to me. For the next 30 minutes, as the afternoon grew cooler around them, Amara walked him through her solution. She spoke with growing animation, her earlier nervousness giving way to confidence as she explained the memory leak she'd spotted and the more efficient approach she'd implemented. James listened, occasionally asking questions that she answered, with impressive clarity. It wasn't just that she'd fixed a bug. She'd restructured a section of code that had been giving his development team headaches for weeks. This would have saved us at least 2 weeks of debugging once the app went to scale, James admitted when she finished. How did you see it so quickly? Amara shrugged. It's a pattern I've seen before. In my senior project, we built a similar system and ran into the same issue. Once you've spent 3 days tracking down a memory leak like that, you never forget what it looks like. James closed the laptop, his mind racing. He thought about his development team, bright, capable programmers who'd missed what this woman had spotted in minutes. He thought about the 178 job applications and what that kind of rejection does to a person's spirit. I'm late for a meeting, he said abruptly, standing up. Very late, actually. Amara stood too, pulling her coat tighter around her. I really am sorry about using your computer without permission. It won't happen again. No, I don't imagine it will, James agreed. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a business card and handed it to her. Come to this address tomorrow at 9 a.m. Ask for me at reception. Amara took the card, reading it with a frown. Next level tech. Wait, you're not just any James. Are you? You're James Harrington. The James Harrington? That's what they tell me, he replied with a small smile. And you want me to come to your office? Amara asked, confusion clear in her voice. Why? Are you pressing charges or something? Do you want to keep serving coffee, Amara? James asked. Her expression hardened. No. I want to build things. I want to solve problems. I've wanted that since I was 12 and taught myself to code on a second-hand laptop. Good, James said. Then be at that address tomorrow at 9. Bring your resume and be prepared to explain your fix to my development team. Amara stared at him, disbelief slowly giving way to understanding. Are you offering me an interview? I'm offering you a chance, James corrected. What you do with it is up to you. He checked his watch and winced. I really have to go. Those investors are probably ready to pull their funding by now. Go, Amara said, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. And good luck with your presentation. James nodded and turned to leave, then paused. By the way, what was your focus at MIT? Artificial intelligence and algorithm optimization, Amara replied. James laughed. Of course it was. See you tomorrow, Amara. As he walked back toward his office building, laptop securely under his arm this time, James felt a strange mix of emotions. There was still a touch of anger at having his privacy invaded, but it was overshadowed by something else. Excitement, perhaps at the prospect of bringing such raw talent into his company. But there was also discomfort, a nagging question about why someone like Amara had been overlooked by the industry. How many other brilliant minds were out there, serving coffee or waiting tables because doors remained closed to them? When he finally reached the conference room, the investors were indeed irritated by his absence. But as James launched into his presentation, his mind was already elsewhere, thinking about tomorrow's meeting and the waitress with the MIT degree who had fixed his code. In the end, he secured the funding. The investors were impressed by his vision for the company's future, a future that, though they didn't know it yet, might be shaped in part by a chance encounter at a cafe and a mistake that had turned into an opportunity. Back at the daily grind, Amara finished her shift in a daze. She kept touching the business card in her pocket as if to reassure herself it was real. Tomorrow she would put on the interview outfit that had hung unworn in her closet for months. She would walk into the gleaming headquarters of Next Level Tech and face a room full of developers. The thought terrified her. After so many rejections, hope was a dangerous thing. But as she hung up her apron at the end of her shift, she allowed herself to imagine a different life, one where her skills were valued, where she built things that mattered, where she was seen for what she could do rather than how she looked, or where she came from. Whether that life began tomorrow remained to be seen. But for the first time in a long while, it seemed possible. The Next Level Tech building stood 40 stories high, its glass exterior reflecting the morning sun like a beacon. Amara stood on the sidewalk across the street, clutching her portfolio and taking deep breaths. She'd been awake since 5, running through coding problems in her head, rehearsing answers to potential interview questions. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, smoothing down her navy blue blazer, a thrift store find that she'd carefully tailored herself. She checked her watch. 8:45 a.m. Just enough time to calm her racing heart before heading inside. The lobby was all marble and steel, with a sweeping reception desk where 3 receptionists greeted visitors. Amara approached, trying to project a confidence she didn't feel. "Good morning," she said to the receptionist, a young man with a friendly smile. "I have a meeting with James Harrington at 9. The receptionist's eyebrows rose slightly. "Mr. Harrington, do you have an appointment?" "Yes," Amara replied, pulling out the business card James had given her. "He asked me to come in today." The receptionist checked his computer, then made a quick phone call. After a brief conversation, he looked up at Amara with newfound interest. "Someone will be down to escort you up shortly, Miss Johnson." Amara nodded her thanks and stepped away from the desk, trying not to fidget as she waited. Around her, employees streamed through the security gates, holding up badges. They all looked so confident, so at ease in this world of glass and steel. Would she ever belong here? Amara. She turned to find James walking toward her, dressed in a crisp suit that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. He looked different here, more formal, more like the CEO he was than the man who drank coffee in a corner of the daily grind. "Good morning, Mr. Harrington," she said, automatically slipping back into the waitress customer dynamic. "James," he corrected with a small smile. "Come on up, the team is waiting." As they rode the elevator to the 38th floor, James briefed her on what to expect. "I've gathered our core development team. I want you to walk them through the issue you found and your solution. They might have questions, technical questions. Just answer honestly." Amara nodded, her throat too dry for words. The elevator climbed higher, the numbers on the display ticking upward. "Nervous?" James asked. "Terrified," Amara admitted. "I haven't been in a room full of developers since my last failed interview 6 months ago." James studied her for a moment. "You don't need to be scared of them, Amara. After today, they might be a little scared of you." Before she could ask what he meant, the elevator doors opened onto a bright open-plan office. Glass-walled meeting rooms lined one side, while the center was filled with clusters of desks. People moved about with purpose, some hunched over computers. Others gathered in small groups, gesturing at whiteboards covered in diagrams. James led her to the largest meeting room, where 7 people sat around a table. They looked up as James and Amara entered, curiosity evident on their faces. "Everyone, this is Amara Johnson," James announced. "Amara, meet our development team." He introduced them one by one: Vivian, the CFO; Daniel, the head of development; Priya, the lead algorithm specialist; and 4 senior developers whose names Amara tried to commit to memory despite her nerves. "Amara has a degree in computer science from MIT," James continued, "with a focus on AI and algorithm optimization. Yesterday, she spotted a critical flaw in our new app's code and fixed it. I want her to show you what she found." The team exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Daniel, a man in his 40s with salt and pepper hair, leaned forward. "What exactly did you find?" he asked, his tone carefully neutral. James gestured to a laptop connected to a large screen at the end of the room. "Show them, Amara." Taking a deep breath, Amara moved to the laptop. The familiar code was already on the screen. With steady hands that betrayed none of her inner turmoil, she began to explain. "Here," she said, pointing to a section of code. "This function creates a new instance every time it's called, but nothing is clearing the memory afterward. It works fine in testing with small datasets, but once you scale up to real-world usage, it would leak memory like a sieve," Daniel finished, leaning in, closer to the screen. "But how did you—" "We've been through this code 100 times. Sometimes it takes fresh eyes," Amara replied, gaining confidence as she spoke about the technical problem. "I restructured it this way." She navigated to the modified section, explaining her approach as she went. The room grew quiet as the team followed her explanation, occasionally asking questions that she answered with growing assurance. "This is elegant," Priya said finally, breaking a moment of silence. "Really elegant. And it would be much more efficient at scale." "I estimated a 40% reduction in memory usage," Amara added, "and possibly faster processing time, though I'd need to run more tests to be sure." Daniel sat back in his chair, an unreadable expression on his face. "James said you found this bug just by glancing at a laptop screen. Is that true?" Amara felt her cheeks warm. "Yes, While I was serving coffee and Mr. Harrington, James had the code up on his screen. I recognized the pattern because I'd run into something similar before." "And you just decided to fix it?" another developer asked, sounding somewhere between impressed and amused. "I know it was presumptuous," Amara admitted, "but seeing a bug like that and not fixing it, it would be like a doctor noticing someone bleeding and just walking past." That earned a few smiles around the table. The tension in the room had shifted, the initial skepticism giving way to something closer to respect. "I have a question," Vivian said, speaking for the first time. "Where have you been working since MIT?" And there it was, the question Amara had been dreading. She straightened her shoulders, determined not to show shame. "The Daily Grind Cafe for the past 6 months," she said evenly. "Before that, I was at TechStart Solutions for 3 months as a junior developer until they downsized. And before that, I was sending out applications. A lot of applications." "With an MIT degree?" Priya asked, echoing James's reaction from the day before. Amara met her gaze. "Yes, with an MIT degree, and a perfect GPA, and 3 published papers on algorithm optimization." The room fell silent again, but this silence felt different, heavier, charged with unspoken realizations. James, who had been quiet during Amara's presentation, finally spoke. "I think we've seen enough. Amara, would you mind stepping outside for a few minutes while we discuss?" Amara nodded, trying to read his expression and failing. Had she said too much? Not enough? She left the room, the glass door closing behind her with a soft click. In the hallway, she paced slowly, watching the busy office through the glass walls. These people all had what she wanted, not just jobs in tech, but a place where they could solve problems, build things, use their skills. How many of them had faced the kind of rejection she had? How many had nearly given up, as she almost had inside the meeting room. The discussion seemed intense. Daniel was gesturing emphatically, while Priya nodded in agreement with whatever he was saying. James sat at the head of the table, listening more than speaking. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 minutes, the door opened and James beckoned her back in. "We've reached a decision," he said as Amara took a seat. His face gave nothing away. Daniel cleared his throat. "Your solution to the memory leak problem was impressive. More than impressive. It was insightful in a way that, well, that we missed, despite having more resources and more eyes on the code." Amara waited, her heart pounding. "We'd like to offer you a position," James said. "Junior developer with a focus on algorithm optimization. 3-month probation period, standard for all new hires, but with the potential for advancement based on performance." For a moment, Amara couldn't speak. After so many rejections, so many doors closed in her face, this offer seemed unreal. She half expected to wake up in her small apartment, ready for another day of serving coffee. "The salary is competitive," Vivian added, sliding a piece of paper across the table, "and includes full benefits." Amara glanced at the number and had to suppress a gasp. It was more than triple what she made at the cafe. "When would you want me to start?" she asked, finding her voice at last. "How about Monday?" James suggested. "That gives you the rest of the week to give notice at the cafe and prepare for the transition." "Monday," Amara repeated, a smile breaking across her face. "Yes, I can start Monday." The meeting concluded shortly after, with Priya offering to give Amara a tour of the office before she left. As they walked among the desks and meeting spaces, Amara tried to absorb the reality of what had just happened. In 24 hours, her life had completely changed course. "You know," Priya said as they stood by a window overlooking the city, "we all have our stories about how we got here. Some paths are straighter than others." Amara looked at her, sensing there was more to this comment than casual conversation. "What was your path?" she asked. Priya smiled. "Let's just say I know what it's like to be underestimated, to have to work twice as hard to get half as far." She paused. "But talent wins out in the end if you're persistent enough, and lucky enough to have someone notice." As Amara left the next-level tech building an hour later, contract in hand, she thought about luck and persistence and the strange twist of fate that had led her to this moment. If James hadn't forgotten his laptop, if she hadn't noticed the code, if she hadn't taken the risk of fixing it. But she had. And now, as she walked down the street toward the daily grind to give her notice, each step felt lighter than the last. The future that had seemed so distant yesterday was now within reach. Not just a job, but a chance to prove what she'd known all along, that she belonged in this field, creating and solving and building, her mind finally free to do what it was meant to do. Monday morning arrived with a mix of rain and nervous energy. Amara stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting her blouse for the 5th time. Her new work clothes, purchased with an advance James had insisted on giving her, still had the crisp feel of unworn fabric. First day, she told her reflection. Just the first of many. The weekend had passed in a blur. She'd given notice at the daily grind, where Tom had congratulated her with genuine happiness. Her coworkers had thrown an impromptu celebration during her final shift, complete with a cake that read, "From coffee to code." Now, as she grabbed her umbrella and headed out the door, the reality of her new life was finally sinking in. No more early morning coffee rushes. No more aching feet from 8-hour shifts on hard floors. Instead, she was walking into a world of algorithms and innovation, where her mind would be put to use in ways she'd dreamed of since college. The next-level tech building looked different today, less intimidating, more like a place where she belonged. The security guard greeted her warmly, handing over a badge with her name and photo. 38th floor, he reminded her. The tech department. In the elevator, Amara ran her thumb over the badge, feeling the raised letters of her name. Such a small thing, yet it represented everything she'd fought for. Priya was waiting when the elevator doors opened, coffee cup in hand. Ready for day one? As I'll ever be, Amara replied with a nervous smile. First stop, your desk, then team. Meeting at 10. James wants you there. Amara followed Priya through the open office space to a desk near a window. It was clean and empty save for a new laptop, a company phone, and a small plant with a note that simply read, "Welcome aboard." The plant is from me, Priya said. Office tradition. Mine's lasted 3 years so far. She pointed to a thriving fern on her own desk. Thank you, Amara said, touched by the gesture. I'll try not to kill it. Take an hour to set up, then I'll introduce you around, Priya suggested. Meeting room 3 at 10, don't forget. Left alone, Amara sat at her desk, and took a moment to absorb the view. The city stretched out below, buildings catching the morning light that broke through the rain clouds. From the cafe, she'd only ever seen this building. From the outside, never imagining she'd one day look out from within it. The next hour passed quickly as she set up her computer and organized her workspace. By the time Priya returned to give her a proper tour, Amara had already logged into the company systems and familiarized herself with the project management tools. You work fast, Priya observed. Good. You'll need to. The tour introduced Amara to more colleagues than she could possibly remember. Each greeted her with varying degrees of curiosity and welcome. Some had clearly heard the story of how she'd been discovered, while others simply knew her as the new hire in algorithm optimization. At 5 minutes to 10, Priya led her to meeting. Room 3, where several developers were already gathered, including Daniel and 2 others from her interview. James likes punctuality, Priya whispered as they took seats. One of his few rigid rules. Sure enough, James arrived precisely at 10, closing the door behind him. Today he wore a more casual outfit, dark jeans and a button-down shirt, but still carried himself with the unmistakable authority of someone in charge. Good morning, team, he began, his gaze sweeping the room before landing on Amara. I see our newest member has arrived. Welcome officially, Amara. She nodded her thanks, acutely aware of all eyes turning briefly to her. Today's meeting is about the AppCore project, James continued. As you know, we've been developing this platform for nearly a year, and we're approaching the final testing phase before release. He pulled up a presentation on the room's main screen, showing a sleek interface with the next-level tech logo. AppCore is our most ambitious project to date, a platform that will allow businesses to create custom applications without extensive coding knowledge. It's also the project where Amara found our memory leak issue. There were a few murmurs around the table as James continued his presentation, outlining the project's status and the timeline for completion. Amara listened intently, absorbing every detail, occasionally jotting notes on a pad. Now, James said, reaching what seemed to be the main point of the meeting, we've hit a roadblock with the natural language processing component. The algorithm isn't interpreting user commands with the accuracy we need for launch. Daniel nodded, looking frustrated. We've tried 3 different approaches. The success rate is hovering around 87%, and we need at least 95% for this to be viable. What kind of commands are failing? Amara asked before she could stop herself. All eyes turned to her again, and she wondered if she'd overstepped by speaking up so soon. But James looked interested. Good question. Daniel, can you show the test cases? Daniel pulled up a spreadsheet with hundreds of test commands and their results. Amara leaned forward, scanning the data, her mind already beginning to process patterns in the failed interpretations. Do you mind if I... She gestured toward the screen. Go ahead, James encouraged. For the next 15 minutes, Amara analyzed the data, asking occasional questions about the algorithm's structure and the training data used. The room grew quiet as she worked, the other team members watching with a mixture of curiosity and from some mild skepticism. I think I see the issue, she said finally. Your algorithm is trained primarily on formal technical language, but many of these failed commands use colloquial expressions or have grammatical inconsistencies, the kind real users would naturally type. She pointed to specific examples. Look at these patterns. The algorithm handles create a database for customer information perfectly, but struggles with make a thing for customer info even though they're functionally requesting the same action. Daniel leaned in, his brow furrowed. So you're saying our training data is too perfect? Essentially, yes. Amara nodded. Real users don't speak or type like developers. They use slang, abbreviations, imperfect grammar. If you want this to work in the real world, your algorithm needs to understand how real people actually communicate. The room was silent for a moment. Then Priya laughed softly. She's right. We've been so focused on technical accuracy that we forgot about human messiness. Can you fix it? James asked directly, looking at Amara. She felt a flutter of both excitement and apprehension. This was a major component of their flagship project, and she was being asked to tackle it on her first day. I'd need to restructure the training data and modify the parsing algorithm, she said thoughtfully. But yes, I think I can improve it significantly. James nodded decisively. Good. This is your primary assignment then. Work with Daniel's team, but lead the approach. I want daily progress reports. And just like that, on her first day, Amara was given responsibility for a critical component of the company's most important project. As the meeting concluded and people filed out, she sat momentarily stunned by the rapid turn of events. Surprised? James asked, hanging back as the others left. A little, Amara admitted. I thought I'd be eased in more gradually. James smiled slightly. I don't believe in gradual when it comes to talent. You've already proven you can see things my other developers miss. Why waste that insight on minor tasks? What if I fail? The question slipped out before she could contain it. Then we'll learn something and try again. James replied simply. But I don't think you will fail, Amara. I think you'll show everyone exactly why you're here. With that, he left, leaving Amara to gather her notes and thoughts. Outside the meeting room, she could see the office in full swing. Developers huddled in discussion, whiteboard diagrams being sketched and erased, the constant tap of keyboards like rainfall on glass. This was the world she'd fought to enter for so long. Now she was not just in it, but being asked to shape it, to solve problems others couldn't. The responsibility was daunting, but also exhilarating. Daniel approached as she exited the meeting room. So you're taking on the NLP component, he said, his tone carefully neutral. Apparently so, Amara replied, watching his face for signs of resentment. This had been his project after all, but to her surprise he smiled. Good. Fresh eyes are exactly what we need. The team's been beating their heads against this problem for weeks. I'll need access to all the training data and algorithm documentation, she said. You'll have it within the hour, Daniel promised. And Amara? Don't let the pressure get to you. James throws people into the deep end sometimes, but he wouldn't do it if he didn't think you could swim. Over the next few days, Amara immersed herself in the natural language processing problem. She worked long hours, often staying well past when others had gone home. She rebuilt the training data set, incorporating slang, colloquialisms, and grammatically imperfect commands. She restructured the parsing algorithm to better handle ambiguity and context. By Thursday afternoon, she was ready for the first test run. Several team members gathered around her desk as she initiated the program. Moment of truth, Priya murmured. Standing closest to Amara, the test cases began running automatically, hundreds of commands being processed in sequence. The results appeared in real time, a growing list of successes and failures. Amara held her breath, watching the numbers tick upward. When the final command processed, the success rate flashed on screen, 93.8%. That's a 7% improvement in 4 days, Daniel said, clearly impressed. Not quite the 95% target, but I can get it there, Amara interrupted, already seeing where further refinements could be made. Give me until Monday. The team dispersed, leaving Amara to her work. As she fine-tuned the algorithm, she felt a deep satisfaction that had been missing from her life for too long. This wasn't just a job. It was a chance to create, to solve, to make something better than it was before. Later that evening, as most of the office had emptied, James stopped by her desk. I heard about the test results, he said. Impressive. Progress. Thank you, Amara replied, looking up from her screen. I'm still working on it. James nodded, glancing at the time. It's nearly 9. You know you can go home, right? The building won't disappear if you leave it. Amara smiled. I know. I just want to finish this section while it's fresh in my mind. Don't burn yourself out in the first week, James advised. This is a marathon, not a sprint. I'll head home soon, she promised. And James, thank you for taking a chance on me. Not many would have. He studied her for a moment. It wasn't charity, Amara. It was good business. Your talent was being wasted making coffee, and I don't like waste. He paused. Especially when it's caused by short-sightedness and bias in my own industry. With that, he left, leaving Amara to reflect on how completely her life had changed in just 1 week. From serving coffee to leading algorithm development at a major tech company, all because she'd taken a risk when she saw a problem she could fix. As she finally packed up to leave an hour later, Amara looked out at the city lights spread below. Somewhere out there, others like her were waiting tables, driving ride shares, working jobs that had nothing to do with their education or talents, all while doors remained closed to them. Maybe, she thought, one day she'd be the one opening those doors. 6 months passed in a whirlwind of code, meetings, and breakthroughs. Amara's desk was no longer bare. It held framed certificates of achievement, a collection of quirky tech figurines gifted by colleagues, and a thriving plant that had nearly doubled in size. The App Core project had launched to significant industry acclaim 2 months earlier. The natural language processing component, now achieving a remarkable 97.2% accuracy rate, was highlighted in tech reviews as a standout feature. Amara had been named in several articles as the rising star behind the innovation. On this particular Friday afternoon, the office buzzed with unusual energy. The quarterly company gathering was scheduled for 5 o'clock, a tradition where James addressed all employees, shared company updates, and recognized outstanding achievements. Nervous? Priya asked, stopping by Amara's desk. About what? Amara replied, looking up from her screen. Don't play coy, Priya laughed. Everyone knows you're getting the Innovation Award today. Your language processing module is being implemented across 3 other products now. Amara smiled but shook her head. Nothing's been announced officially. And besides, there's a lot of innovative work happening here. True, Priya conceded, but not everyone comes in and revolutionizes a core component in their first week. Before Amara could respond, a notification appeared on her computer, a calendar reminder for a meeting with James in 15 minutes. It hadn't been on her schedule that morning. Odd, she murmured. James wants to see me before the gathering. Priya raised her eyebrows. Maybe to practice your acceptance speech? Amara rolled her eyes good-naturedly and saved her work. In the 6 months she'd been at Next Level, she and Priya had become close friends. After years of feeling like an outsider in the tech world, having someone who understood both her struggles and her triumphs was a gift Amara hadn't expected. James's office occupied the corner of the 39th floor, with glass walls offering panoramic views of the city. When Amara arrived, he was standing by the window, hands clasped behind his back. Come in, Amara, he said without turning. And close the door. Something in his tone made her pause. This didn't sound like a pre-award conversation. Is everything okay? She asked, taking a seat across from his desk. James turned, his expression serious but not unfriendly. I wanted to talk to you before the gathering, about your future here. Amara's stomach tightened. Despite her successes, old insecurities died hard. My future? You've been with us 6 months now, James continued, taking his seat. Your probation period ended 3 months ago and your performance has been exceptional by any measure. He pulled up a document on his screen, turning it so she could see. It was a performance analysis of the App Core project, with her name highlighted throughout. The report. The natural language processing component you developed has become a cornerstone of our product strategy, James said. We're implementing variations of it across our entire platform. The board has taken notice. Amara relaxed slightly. This didn't sound like bad news. I'm offering you a promotion, James stated directly. Lead developer for artificial intelligence integration. You'd have your own team, a substantial budget increase, and complete creative control over how we implement AI across all next-level products. Amara blinked, momentarily speechless. Lead developer was typically a position that required years, sometimes decades, of industry experience. That's a significant jump, she managed finally. Yes, it is, James agreed. And there will be people who question it, both inside and outside this company. Your age, your limited industry experience, these will be cited as reasons why you're not ready. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. But I've watched you these past 6 months, Amara. You don't just solve problems. You see opportunities. No one else does. That's rare, and it's exactly what we need leading our AI strategy. Amara took a deep breath, processing the offer. 6 months ago, she'd been serving coffee. Now she was being offered a leadership role at one of the most innovative tech companies in the country. I'd be the youngest lead developer in company history, wouldn't I? She asked, already knowing the answer. By about 8 years, James confirmed, with a slight smile. But firsts are important. Someone has to break the pattern. He slid a folder across the desk. Your new contract, if you accept. Take the weekend to think it over. Amara opened the folder, glancing at the salary figure. It was nearly double what she was currently making, an amount that would allow her to finally pay off her student loans and perhaps even help her younger sister with college costs. I don't need the weekend, she said, looking up at James. I accept. James's smile broadened. I hoped you would. We'll announce it at the gathering today. He stood, signaling the end of their meeting. And Amara, this is just the beginning. The company gathering was held in the large atrium on the ground floor. Nearly 300 employees stood chatting, in groups, drinks in hand, as James took the stage. Good afternoon, Next Level, he began, his voice carrying through the space. Another quarter behind us, and what a quarter it's been. He proceeded to share company updates, new clients, expanding markets, financial growth that exceeded projections. The crowd responded with appropriate enthusiasm, but Amara noticed many people glancing her way. Word of her meeting with James must have spread. Now, as is our tradition, we recognize those who have made exceptional contributions this quarter. James continued. The Innovation Award goes to the AppCore team for creating a platform that has already transformed how dozens of our clients operate. Daniel stepped forward to accept the team award, giving Amara a nod of acknowledgement as he did. She smiled back, genuinely pleased for the recognition of the entire team's effort. And finally, James said, I have a special announcement. As many of you know, Next Level is expanding our artificial intelligence division to meet growing demand. Leading this initiative will be our new lead developer for AI integration, Amara Johnson. A murmur went through the crowd as James gestured for Amara to join him on stage. As she made her way forward, she was acutely aware of the mixed reactions. Surprise, approval, and yes, from some, skepticism. Amara joined us just 6 months ago, James continued as she reached the stage. Many of you know her story, how she spotted and fixed a critical error in our code that our entire team had missed. What you might not know is that Amara sent out 178 job applications after graduating from MIT before landing at Next Level. He turned to address the crowd more directly. That's 178 companies that missed the opportunity to hire one of the most innovative minds I've encountered in 20 years in this industry. Their loss is our gain. Amara felt a rush of emotion at his words, at the public acknowledgement not just of her abilities but of the struggle that had preceded her success. Thank you, she said, taking the microphone. 6 months ago, I was serving coffee at the Daily Grind Cafe. Today, I'm standing here accepting this incredible opportunity. The difference isn't that I suddenly became smarter or more capable. It's that someone finally looked past preconceptions and saw potential. She paused, gathering her thoughts. In tech, we talk a lot about innovation, but true innovation requires diverse perspectives. Different backgrounds, different experiences lead to different solutions. I'm grateful to James and to everyone at Next Level for creating an environment where that diversity is valued, not just in words but in actions. The applause that followed felt genuine, warming Amara from within. As she stepped down from the stage, colleagues approached to offer congratulations, ask questions about her vision for the AI division, or simply introduce themselves. Later, as the gathering wound down, Amara found herself standing with Priya near one of the large windows overlooking the street. "Lead developer," Priya said, raising her glass in a toast. "Impressive." "Terrifying," Amara corrected with a small laugh. "But in a good way." "You know what this means, don't you?" Priya asked, her expression growing more serious. "You're going to be visible. Industry conferences, tech publications, the works. A young black female AI lead is going to draw attention." Amara nodded, having already considered this. "Good. Let them pay attention. Maybe it'll help the next person who sends out 178 applications." Across the atrium, she spotted James speaking with a group of board members. He caught her eye and gave a slight nod. Acknowledgement, encouragement, perhaps even a touch of pride. 6 months ago, he had caught her using his computer without permission, an act that could have ended very differently. Instead, it had become the pivot point around which her life had turned. The following Monday, Amara arrived at the office to find she'd been moved to a new space, a corner office on the 38th floor with her name on the door. Inside, a team of 5 developers waited to meet their new leader, a mix of anticipation and curiosity on their faces. "Good morning," Amara greeted them, setting down her bag. "Let's talk about how we're going to reshape artificial intelligence at next level." As the meeting progressed, with ideas flowing and possibilities expanding, Amara thought about the journey that had brought her here. From the crowded lecture halls of MIT to the quiet desperation of sending out application after application. From the hard floors of the daily grind to this office with her name on the door. The path hadn't been straight or easy, but it had led her exactly where she was meant to be. And now, with a team looking to her for guidance and a company backing her vision, she had the chance to build something truly remarkable, not just in code but in creating opportunities for others like her. Later that day, during a brief break between meetings, Amara received an email from James. It contained no text, just an attachment, a photograph of her on her first day at the daily grind, nervously taking an order, unaware her life was about to change. Amara smiled at the image, then closed it and turned back to her computer. On the screen was the beginning of a new project, an AI-driven platform designed to match overlooked talent with companies smart enough to value it. She began to type, her fingers moving across the keyboard with purpose and precision, writing, not just code, but a new chapter in a story that was still unfolding. A story about talent recognized, potential unleashed, and barriers that, once broken, could never be rebuilt.